Hello, this is the Growth League podcast. My name is Caleb Clark, and my mission for this show is pretty simple. It's to learn from marketers on how they're playing the great game of marketing leadership. Their ideas, experiences, perspective, wins and losses, and the playbook that they've established over time. Listen, there's more than one way to lead a marketing team and a marketing function. So if you're a VP, a CMO, director, or someone aspiring to fill one of these marketing leadership roles in the future, tune in to learn from some of the best in the business.
Led me to my love for the strategy side of marketing. I got exposure to, marketing directors and VP marketing type folks that were my clients, and I realized, okay, that's where I want to be. And in digging into their backgrounds, realized I kind of got to get an education in business. So I went back to school and did my MBA after, not having done a math course since grade 10. Right. I had to sit down and take the GMAT and get myself up to speed.
And today I have the privilege of chatting with Shea Cole. She is the VP of Marketing at Field Effect. It's at Field Effect where Shea leads a talented team of tech marketing professionals. Field Effect is one of Canada's fastest growing companies, hyper-growth cybersecurity company that offers a full stack solution that is affordable for businesses of any size. Shea, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
So before Field Effect, give us an understanding of your journey so far as a marketer and as a marketing leader, and ultimately what brought you to Field Effect and has kept you there for a year.
Yeah, sure. My journey to become a marketer started in a little bit of a different place. So I actually always thought I was really going to be a creative and more on the visual arts side. And I did my undergrad in fine arts. I was a painting major. And then I graduated in 2009, and it was a rough time to find a job and make ends meet. So I just kept going back to school. So I thought to myself, okay, how do I turn this passion for art into something that can feed me? And did a post grad in graphic design, and started working at agencies. That agency work is what ultimately led me to my love for the strategy side of marketing. I got exposure to, marketing directors and VP marketing type folks that were my clients, and I realized, okay, that's where I want to be. And in digging into their backgrounds, realized I kind of got to get an education in business. So I went back to school and did my MBA after, not having done a math course since grade 10. Right. I had to sit down and take the GMAT and get myself up to speed, and was the only one in my MBA class that was coming from an arts background. I was, most people there they already had a business degree, or they were, math background, stats background, CPAs. But what I did realize was marketing has an art side, right? But it's art and science and math and a little bit of black magic. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah. I think it further illustrates a point I try to make all the time, where, like you said, there's a critical art component, storytelling component. But if that is not nested in fulfilling a business case, you're really just performing random acts of marketing, right? Or random acts of creative. Yes. So that's really interesting, the approach you took to both acknowledging where the gaps were in terms of being a true industry-leading marketing leader, and then went and filled them through a lot of school and putting yourself back into that academic world. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the MBA is not something that I think is necessary for people to be really great marketers. But for me, it was just a great way to get comfortable with numbers. Right. And then, it was the network and the experience that followed that. Yeah. Right. I got my foot in the door at Labatt, which is an Anheuser-Busch InBev company. And that was my first role after my MBA. And I got that connection through the MBA network.
Right.
Right. And then learned so much at that company. Like, man, there's smart people at that company.
Oh, I bet. It's funny how what we end up taking from these graduate studies. A similar story. I went there to find my co-founder. That was kind of my initial intent. I did my MBA with the sole intent to do enough in school so that I could stay in the program, but was ultimately in search for the biggest takeaway for me, which was meeting my co-founder 13 years ago. So I think you're right, totally on that. Be intentional about what you want out of that program, and then do it. But so tell me, as you learned about the business side of it. What is the business case ultimately that needs to be fulfilled by marketing at Field Effect? How do you see your mandate?
Oh, wow. Super interesting question. So it's a little bit similar to my last role, right? Where I was at a company called FullScript. I joined when the company was pretty small, like 30 people,
Right.
and stayed until the company was over 1,000 people.
Right.
And, from 20 million in revenue to $1 billion valuation,
Wow.
And there's this element of managing chaos in a way where you're harnessing it at times and embracing a little bit of chaos because it helps you move quickly, and then you're finding the right time to inject process and to grow up. And so that's where we are with Field Effect today. Is like, we're growing really quickly. We have about 200 people at the company now, and the product is freaking awesome. But there's like these little pockets of chaotic things that come with a startup environment. And the biggest challenge that we have as leaders in any department, and especially in marketing, is to figure out, okay, where and when and how do we inject process to rein in the chaos a little bit without losing that startup magic, which is move fast and break stuff, right?
Right. I've never heard it described that way, but you're totally right in the timing component of what you said. Like, you can have vision and strategy for what pieces need to fit together, but oftentimes it's intentionally either delaying or speeding up the application of that into the mix. And that becomes critically important in a startup sort of hustle paced, let's find our fit. So tell me a little bit about the team that you are a part of right now, immediately within the marketing department. What does that look like from a structure and capabilities standpoint?
Oh, yeah. So good question, because I'm constantly asking myself if I have the right structure.
Right.
And, just like little edits, I think over time are super important on a marketing team, because unlike other teams where you might have like a similar, maybe you have 3 profiles, right? You're in sales, you've got BDR, SDR, SE, and like as you grow, you just like expanding out those layers.
Right.
A marketing team is different because you go from, when you're small, having generalists to, as you grow, getting more and more specific. So how do you build a team where you're not like, it's not about turnover, it's about evolving people so that they're comfortable going deeper on a more specific area,
Right.
So I'm constantly asking myself, is this the right structure, and how is the structure going to evolve as we grow? So you might ask me this question in 6 months and I answer it differently, but today I've got a demand gen team that has someone managing more like paid stuff, and someone managing outbound email, and then the director's very hands-on working with the BDRs to make sure that we're collaborating on intent-based lists of prospects and nurturing those appropriately. I have a creative team right now that's led by like a comms focused person. So we've got art direction, design, video, animation, and copy sitting under the same director as events and organic content social.
Right.
So, as we grow, maybe that will split off to 2 teams, who knows? And then we have a RevOps team that sits under me that kind of straddles marketing and sales and handles analytics, reporting, and the whole kind of MarTech stack. Product marketing reports to product
Okay.
at Field Effect. That can work
Makes sense.
either way. Yeah, but we work really closely with them.
Is that because of the nuance sort of complexity of the offering that you need to marry product tech to product marketing, or why is it that for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we're trying. Again, it's like who knows if it will
Yeah.
stay that way. I think that there is a lot of foundational work that we need to do on products that we are launching in the coming year or so. And so having the product marketer be really close to the chief product officer
Right.
made a lot of sense to us. But yeah, we still really work closely with them for the messaging piece. And, anytime we launch a campaign, they're at the top of our process, helping
Right.
us with that brief.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
in your scenario with not fragmentation's the wrong word, but a team that has different departments, different people they report to, how do you as the VP in your current role create a sense of single directionedness, or like the North Star, or let's all swim in the same lane? How do you facilitate alliance or kind of alignment amongst all these teams in pursuit of the thing that matters?
Yeah. It's with the routine, right?
Yeah.
So I've got a stand up on Monday with just my direct reports. And then I've got a team meeting on Wednesday morning with the whole team. And
Right.
so that's an opportunity to like flesh out what matters on Monday, reiterate it with the whole team on Wednesday. And then we do a monthly call between marketing and like everyone from the sales team where we can then like
Right.
cascade that with them. There's regular weekly meetings on like what we call tiger teams. So like I've got a weekly on sales incentives where we collaborate with the sales team to say, okay, like what's an incentive that we're running right now and how do we promote it and what's the messaging around it. We've got a couple different products in our portfolio and they each have their own weekly meeting on demand gen so that we can communicate with the sales team and like say, okay, how did this lead list work out for you and what's the feedback and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I try to attend as many of those meetings as I can as a fly on the wall so that I can learn. I try not to run all of them because that's the time consuming part is like if you've got to go to the meeting and you've got to prep for the meeting.
Right.
But if I can be a fly on the wall, then I really get a good sense of what's going on. And then in my stand up and in my, my Wednesday team meeting, I can reiterate to the team, here's what matters. Here's the feedback that we're seeing. And, here's where we might need to tweak or where I am expecting some action in a certain direction.
Right. You become that constant across the different meetings, whether varying levels of participation, but there's a line of common denominator there strategically, I guess. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So in your role today, what would you say, or what would others say about you as being Shea's superpower? What is the thing that you feel most confident about yourself that you believe best positions you to fulfill the mandate?
Yeah. I think because of my background more in the arts, I am good at storytelling, both visual and written, right? Like a lot of my education was, long form writing, and I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I think that where I can add a lot of value to a marketing conversation or a sales conversation is to say, okay, here's how we can boil this down and present it in the right order so that people pay attention.
Right. Yeah, that's applying storytelling to data and to technical stuff is a next level capability, and not just telling through pictures and videos and graphics. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thought I have for you as it relates to Field Effect. Almost a year now you've been there. Why do you care about what they're doing? Why do you care about what you do every day for them or with them?
Yeah. I actually joined Field Effect not knowing really anything about cybersecurity, but It was a leadership team that I really trusted. The CFO at Field Effect was the CFO at my last company, FullScript, for a time. So, for me, I think of my career as an investment, right? I'm going to spend this much time on something, I got to know that it's a good investment for me.
Right.
And so when someone that I have worked with before and really trust says this is a good this is a good way for you to spend your time, that means a lot.
Right.
And on top of that, the CEO of this company, I just really gel with. Like his style is bang on what I would want from a CEO that I'm working with. We have really different backgrounds in terms of our knowledge and our experience, and so we learn from each other. But our leadership style and communication style is very similar, and that just makes everything so much easier.
Totally. When you believe the same things, I think it's a lot easier.
Sure. Yeah. There's the obvious financial side that brings a lot of us to the startup space, right? Where you've got options that could potentially turn into real money. But beyond that, I am constantly playing out probably 3 or 4 different scenarios of what my entire career could look like in my head. And I'm trying to figure out what is the next step that I can take that's going to lead me to the highest likelihood of success on on any of those scenarios. Right. And so if I'm in a role where I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is actually propelling me towards that end state of the last job before I retire that I really want, in which case it's time to make a move, right?
Right.
So it's not a singular potential career path, because I'm early enough in my career that there's several, but I'm constantly playing them out in my head. Like, what's the step that's going to move me in those directions? Forever is a long time. I could see myself staying with a company for a significant amount of time if the company is growing and I am growing.
Right.
And so I'm building my own skills and credibility and my own personal brand. My personal brand matters because it moves me towards that end goal of the most success possible by the time I'm ready to retire, right? The scary part. I think, there's a lot of scary things in marketing right now. It's like, okay, keeping up, right? Like marketing tactics and especially the technology behind marketing changes so quickly. How do I know if I'm keeping up, right? And so I'm constantly talking to people outside of our company who are in my network so I can gut check on exactly that thing. And I'm like, okay, here's this problem. How would you solve it? And I've probably already started to solve it. And I'm just gut checking that I'm solving it in a way that's up to speed. It's current. I'm using the latest tools, right? So that's a scary thing, is keeping up. Another thing is people understanding marketing and appreciating it, because when I talk to CEOs that are not from a marketing background, they'll often say, oh, I don't really need a brand marketer. I need a growth marketer. I just need, I need leads. And keeping your leadership educated on the fact that there is no such thing as growth marketing without brand.
Right.
You need to have a brand that's differentiated and meaningful if you want your growth marketing to work. Right. And so you've got to educate them to appreciate what they might see as fluffy. And then I would say the third thing for me is just there's this trend with marketing leaders that they don't last in their role for very long. Like the average tenure of a chief marketing officer, for example, is 18 to 20 months.
Right.
Why? I think it's it goes back to people believing in marketing and understanding marketing. right? The CEO ultimately needs to feel like the marketing leader is a business leader and not just a marketing leader. It's like part of their strategic council that's moving the business forward. I've seen some people start to call the chief marketing officer the chief market officer, and that deepens the role a little bit to be like someone who understands the market, not just the marketing. And I think that line of thinking is going to be really helpful. But ultimately, people like me are not going to be successful unless they can convince the CEO that their marketing leader is an important business leader in their company, right? Oh, really? Yeah. So, it starts in the trenches. And so, I mentioned that monthly call that I have with the sales team where we talk to them about stories and messaging and content pieces and objection handling, and we work through it as a team. That, even though the CEO doesn't attend, is an important way to influence the CEO because they'll hear about that.
Right.
And ultimately, if they feel like the marketing team is influencing every stage of the funnel, right down to what a sales rep can say to improve their conversion rate, then they're going to feel like the marketing team is driving the business forward. But I also think it's like for people in my role, it's just as important to spend time working through strategies to influence the business internally,
Right.
as it is to be working on more tactical stuff with my team. So I do try to maintain time on my calendar to work through problems that I can help solve for my CEO that I know is bothering him, and do the research and talk to analysts and talk to my network so that I can bring him solutions and say, here's a perspective on this. And I also really am adamant about setting aside time in my calendar for things like peer groups and talking to a coach, and because that's the stuff that I'm going to be able to I'll grow my own capabilities and perspectives and then be able to pass that on and start influencing the rest of the executive team. Yeah. Well, when I got my very first direct report, this was actually when I worked at Labatt. I was so freaking excited to manage people. Like, I really thought this was going to be the thing I enjoy the most. And it's not that I don't enjoy it, but what I didn't anticipate is actually the most challenging part of my job.
For sure.
And now I've done a lot of people management, and I went from like being super excited for every time I got to do an interview to now, like, I don't want to say I dread it, but I'm like, oh, okay, here we go, because it's not easy to decide in 30 minutes if someone is the right fit for your team.
Right.
Because people are deeper than that,
Right.
And you've got to be okay with the fact that you're going to make some mistakes sometimes, and you're going to sometimes hire people that don't turn out to be the right fit, and you can't beat yourself up over that. And you're also going to have some people on your team that don't like you, and that was a hard lesson to learn. Like, I really wanted to be the manager that everyone loved to work for. But it's just not realistic when you're managing big teams. Like, you're going to come across people that just, your style doesn't mesh, and it might take you some time to figure it out, and then you're going to part ways. It just is what it is, and it's par for the course. But what I will say I have definitely learned is appreciate every person's perspective, and try to put yourself in their shoes, because someone's perspective is their truth, and you might see something from exactly the opposite angle until you put yourself in that person's shoes, and then you'll see where they're coming from, and it makes you appreciate people and foster debate. And the other thing is just resilience, right? Like, maybe it's because I'm in a startup environment, but that's the number one thing that that I look for people on my team is like, are you resilient enough to live through the constantly changing environment of a startup? Because if you're not, no offense, but you shouldn't be here.
Right.
You point them in the right direction and get out of their way. The worst thing you can do for someone like that is micromanage them, because that will drive them crazy. Like, they need to know that you actually want them to succeed, and you actually love the fact that they know more than you in some areas, right? There's got to be no ego here. Like, if I've got a person like that, I can't do their job. Like, I hired them because they can do it and I can't. Right?
Right.
So you just got to get out of their way. And when you say like they still need leadership, they still need someone to give them the context of the rest of the organization and to point them in the right direction. But what they really don't need is someone to be looking over their shoulder constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not working with a ton of external partners right now. We have a few. I do see that changing in the future, and adding more and more external partners. I think it's a really great way to scale quickly, when you can have that combination of internal and external. But I have worked with external partners a lot in the past, and I think the key thing is like you've got to educate them on how your business works, right? And make sure that they understand your brand and your customer and your problems. You've got to meet with them regularly, just like you would with your team, right? Like, that's the weekly stand up to go through what's working, what's not, and give them the candid feedback. I really like performance pay because I think that it shows your external partners that like they've got skin in the game, and like you're willing to compensate them generously if they're contributing to those results. Just like I get a bonus if we do well, our external partners should too. And so that's something that I've used in the past that's worked really well. I really like teaching, and I really like networking, and I really like mentoring. So I have a course that I teach on electives, that's about how to build a strategy, and I really enjoy teaching that course. I am a mentor with a local group that serves new immigrants to Canada, and helping. I speak with people who were in marketing in a different country rather, and then they come here and they need to figure out how to transfer their personal brand and have it kind of match the expectations of Canadian employers. I try to take the phone call when people reach out. I get a lot of messages through LinkedIn, as we all do right now, because LinkedIn is a sales tool as well. And I won't take the call if they're selling something that I'm not looking for, because then it's a waste of both of our time, not just me. But if it's someone who's legitimately just looking to have a coffee and learn something, I try to take that call, because usually I get something out of it. It might not be immediately, but usually it comes back around. It's like networking karma, right? Like you take a phone call with someone who got laid off and is looking for a job and wants to know who you know, or what they should be looking for in the next role, and then you find out, oh, they actually have implemented I don't know, like something with your attribution system that you can learn from and leverage, and they end up giving you really great advice. That happened to me like 2 weeks ago. So I try to take the call. Yeah, I've heard people say pretty frequently that you need to surround yourself with the person you want to be. And I have tried putting that into practice, and it really works well. So if you are a coordinator, then try to find a peer group of people that are just that little bit more experienced than you. and it's going to take your game to the next level. And you should be constantly trying to level up your peer group, your network, so that you're learning from people, because it's really easy to get in an echo chamber of how it's done at your existing company, and that's how you fall behind, right? Like I was talking about earlier, the thing that we should all be afraid of is how do you keep up with the ever-changing environment in marketing? Well, that's how you do it. Oh man, yeah, like we have such a fantastic product, and we've spent the company has spent the majority of its existence since it was founded in 2016, like making the product freaking awesome, and it's time to like just tell the world about it. And so for me, there's a big challenge on first make sure that the message is right and it's differentiated and it really is authentic with how the product shows up and how the services show up, and then like just shout it from the rooftops. So yeah, we were bootstrapped until 2022,
Okay.
and just got our Series A in the fall 2022. So now we've got money in the bank to make a big splash, and that's the plan.